She thinks she's been getting a rougher deal than other states like South Australia and I guess Western Australia, and certainly Gladys Berejiklian's been quite open in criticising Queensland for not reopening. In fairness to Daniel Andrews, I haven't heard him say too much about it, but the likes of Simon Birmingham and other ministers in the government, they've certainly been saying it last couple of days. Scott Morrison's even been saying it. But what we have here now, Kieran, is what you might call a Goldilocks solution to the problem on this, and that is that it's just right. Not too hot and not too cold. You've got a situation where Victoria, it's just too hot to allow people from Victoria in. Big fine she's announced there if you don't declare that you've been to Victoria, and you have to pay your own quarantine. But for other states, you were going to kill the tourism industry if you didn't allow the other states in. You were going to hurt with your voters, pensioners in particular, who might be susceptible to COVID-19 if you let the Victorians in. She's gone for the halfway approach, a sensible approach. So states without community transmission, their citizens will be allowed in, but no Victorians allowed in for Annastacia Palaszczuk. And we're expecting soon to hear from Daniel Andrews, the latest on the Victorian situation. Just to make one other point on Queensland, that announcement there that stadiums can now be half full in Queensland, a number of restrictions being lifted. Annastacia Palaszczuk basically saying, I am keeping Victorians out. Obviously, they're a big industry, particularly in North Queensland, but I'm doing other things for the economy. Daniel Andrews, we've reported this morning that Victoria is expected to shut down its 6 local government areas that have been identified as hotspots, Kieran, because of major concern of this coronavirus outbreak and fears it could put the economy and even more jobs at risk. Prime Minister Scott Morrison, as we've revealed this morning, he wants the shutdowns, and he's been in discussions with Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews around it. Under the Biosecurity Act, it requires a state to shut suburbs down. The federal government can't do it, and perhaps post police around them to issue stay-at-home orders or to penalise people who are breaching such stay-at-home orders. The suggestion is people would be allowed to travel to work in their local government area, but not outside. The Herald Sun speculated could be 10 suburbs this affects. As one federal minister said to me, Kieran, we had such momentum in terms of the economy coming back before this Victorian outbreak. Let's hear Scott Morrison yesterday in answer to a question from me in Sydney around suburban shutdowns. Is it time for suburban shutdowns, for suburbs to be shut down in Melbourne?
Well, the Premier in Victoria has flagged that is an option. The Premier and I are very adamant that we do what is necessary to contain this outbreak. Now, Victoria will lead that approach and they will be the final arbiter of what steps they take. But we can leave no stone unturned and no resource left unapplied to this task. And I certainly will be considering all options and supporting the Premier in any such strong options that are necessary.
And we'll be straight to that Daniel Andrews press conference when it starts shortly. Some good news, if you can call it that. Only 64 new cases today. There were 75 new cases and it seemed to be growing yesterday. So here's some ANZ data I'm going to show you, which shows the effect in Victoria of this outbreak, let alone the potential effect around the country. Spending on dining and entertainment in Victoria was down 20% year on year last week, while it was up 8% in the rest of the country, and consumer confidence is down 4.6%. So you can see already, even without restrictions coming back on, although some restrictions weren't lifted, the material effect there on the Victorian economy so quickly and so sharply, if that community transmission were to hit other states, how absolutely devastating it would be when we're already looking down the barrel of high unemployment numbers and a big GDP drop. So one source has suggested to me that the R factor, the number of people that you transmit coronavirus to if you have the virus in Victoria, could be as high as 2.5 at the moment. At the peak of the New South Wales and Victorian infections, it was around 2. It's just getting out there in the community. Everyone from Scott Morrison to Gladys Berejiklian, the New South Wales Premier, they want suburban shutdowns in Victoria. Let's hear Gladys Berejiklian this morning. She told people from Melbourne, her citizens that people from Melbourne shouldn't be allowed in their houses, but she said she wanted to see the borders open and premiers would suffer if they did not do the same. That's the kind of thing Annastacia Palaszczuk was reacting to before. We'll hear from Gladys Berejiklian and then Stephen Marshall with a similar announcement on borders to Annastacia Palaszczuk.
Ironically, we've already had people from Queensland and WA bring the disease to New South Wales. So we've already experienced that level of interstate transmission, if you like, and we've dealt with it. And that's why I say to all the other states, we've welcomed all the overseas travellers that live in other states. We've even welcomed people who've come across your own borders to New South Wales who had the disease, and we've managed that. There is a path forward because I don't want to see further jobs go. I say to the other states, they rely on New South Wales traditionally. Whilst they might be feeling happy now, in 6 months' time, when those jobs continue to go in their own states, they will be feeling the brunt of those decisions.
We're very pleased with the way that the ACT and New South Wales have been performing. And so it's likely that we will set a date for the removal of the borders with the ACT and New South Wales, but we'll now do that independent of that July 20th date. The Transition Committee will be meeting again on Friday to consider New South Wales and the ACT.